Hey y'all, welcome in or welcome back, and welcome to the first Sunday video of No Buy January, where we're going to be talking about no buy related topics. Today, we're going to be addressing triggers and cues. In this video, we're going to talk about the 5 most common types of triggers. We're going to have examples of each, and then at the end of the video, we're going to talk about an activity you can do to help you learn and identify what your triggers are. There's a template linked in the description if you want to follow along. For habits, triggers and cues are the same thing. And throughout this video, I'm going to be using both of those terms interchangeably because ultimately we're talking about something that initiates the habit loop, and we'll talk about that too. But one thing I do want to keep in mind as we do go through is that triggers often have a negative connotation. Like outside of habits, just generally speaking, triggers don't really have a good connotation. And if we say that a habit is triggered by something, we can assume that this trigger is negative, or the fact that you have a trigger is a negative thing. Again, just habit speaking. However, a trigger or a cue is ultimately just something that kicks off the habit loop. Like going into your fridge, opening up your fridge and seeing that you're out of, bread or milk, that's a trigger. I don't think most people would have a problem or an issue with seeing a food item that you're out of and then, writing it down on the list or, going to the store to replace it. So please keep that in mind as you listen to this video and as you think about your own habits. Triggers aren't inherently bad things. So before we can talk more about triggers or cues, let's just have a quick refresh of the habit loop. And how we shop is a habit. And actually it's more like a coalescence of habits. We have a lot of habits that are embedded in our shopping life. If you want to change how you shop, you need to identify why you shop and, what prompts you to shop. That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. The habit loop is comprised of 4 components. You have your cue, your craving, your response, and your reward. Once your habit loop gets initiated, the thing that actually drives the loop is the reward. Now, when I've watched TikToks, the habit girlies on there will say that you can create a reward to help, reward yourself after hitting a certain milestone or completing a habit a certain number of times. So if your goal is to say stop scrolling in bed, or your goal is to complete No Buy January, you'll have a reward at the end of, let's say, 7 days, 14 days, 30 days. And the reward usually that is suggested is something physical, like a new workout set, or a treat at Starbucks. I bring this up to create a distinction. A reward for your habits can be a physical, tangible thing that you buy yourself or give yourself. And I think in the context of No Buy January, we might want to consider stuff we already have. That can absolutely help, motivate you to complete your habit. Totally. So I think if you want to give yourself a reward for completing No Buy January, maybe something you already own or something like you can do around your house. Common ones that I use are like a reading weekend or like a reading evening, or I set aside everything to read a favorite book, or opening a product that I haven't used yet. One thing I'm looking forward to is a press-on nail set that I've owned for quite a few months. That's one thing. But when we're talking about rewards in the habit loop, we are typically talking about the thing that you receive at the end of the loop. So in the context of shopping, you might assume that it would be receiving the physical thing, right? Like you place an order on, IKEA. First thing that came to mind. You place an order on IKEA for this really cool new home release. Getting it in the mail or buying the item would be the reward. It could be, but often with shopping, the reward is the dopamine hit. It's that feeling that you get when you check out or when you receive the item. And this is often the case, or you can maybe consider if this is your case is if the item that you get matters or not. And I think when it comes to people who are over shopping, it's usually not about the thing, and it's usually about the dopamine hit. Because once you get the thing, once you get it in your life, we can put it in the back of our closet or like leave it in the bag for a few weeks or even a few months. Maybe you just, I don't know, falls by the wayside somewhere. If that happens, it's not really about the thing. It's about the act of buying the thing, aka the dopamine hit. So the dopamine hit is the reward that drives the whole process. And so the reward does drive the entire cycle because we crave the reward. So the craving is, wanting that dopamine hit, wanting that feel good effect. Or if we're talking about something like emotional shopping, the craving is that emotional resolution. It's that feel good feeling that helps us, feel good for a while. Or you just want that negative feeling or that sadness to go away. So like you're craving a resolution to that or a distraction to that. The response is what you do. So you buy something, and then the reward is what you get as a result of buying that thing. If you have any more questions about the habit loop, I would love to answer them. I love talking about the habit loop. It's one of my favorite things. And I hope that the basic structure is clear. The reason why I want to go after cues is because they initiate the whole loop. So if we are able to pinpoint our cues and triggers, we're able to avoid the entire loop altogether, or we can use the loop to our advantage to create good habits. Let's now talk about the 5 most common types of cues and triggers. And the first is time. Time sets off a ton of habits, and that is just, in essence, the time of day kicking up a habit. And when you think about it, a lot of our basic habits, shopping aside, are time dependent. Our morning routines, our evening routines, maybe our lunchtime routines, we can do a lot of habits on autopilot or impulse just because of the time of day. When it comes to shopping, however, the same thing applies. We could buy coffee on our way home from work, or buying lunch at lunchtime, or buying that afternoon pick-me-up. Buying coffee or treats in the afternoon. One of the things I used to do all the time when I went to school, at school would be to bring my own coffee on my way into school. So I would drink one at home, and then I'd bring a second one into school. That would be done by the time I got to where I was going. I would have or teach a class or two. I would have lunch, and then after lunch, there was a second cup in the main floor of my building, and I would go down, I would get my coffee, and then I would go back up, and it became such a habit that I did not think about. 3 p.m. coffee time, baby. There was never really a mental conversation about whether I was tired, whether I needed a coffee, or whether I could do something else. Near the end of my time at grad school, I brought my own mug and coffee that I would brew in our grad lounge. Next up is environment, and this one's a big one too. And this is our location that sets off a habit. And more commonly though, it's something being presented to you in a specific environment. So I'm going to give you an example to help illustrate this. You wake up in the morning, you walk into your kitchen, and you see bagels on the counter. One is made for you. It has your favorite topping on it, and it's just sitting there waiting for you. And you eat it. Would you have gone and made yourself a bagel if it wasn't just there waiting for you? Probably not. I don't know. Maybe there could be muffins on the counter or something, right? There's just muffins chilling there. Now, imagine the same situation where you walk into your kitchen and there are muffins in your fridge or your freezer. You don't see it, but it's there. Do you go and immediately eat the muffin? You are far less likely to eat the muffin if it's sitting there on the counter, maybe on a plate waiting for you, versus, knowing that it's in your fridge or freezer. Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube are also environments. They're just digital ones. And they are the equivalent of the muffin or bagel on the table. Would you have bought that thing if you didn't have it presented to you, if you didn't see it in a YouTube video, or if you didn't see it in a TikTok or a reel? A popular piece of advice, which is to unsubscribe from newsletters, works for this reason. You're not going to go shop a sale if you don't know about it. You're not going to go shop a new release if you don't know about it. This works because you're removing temptations from your digital environment. If you're not interested in getting off these apps completely, you can really just consider how you want your digital environment to look. You get a lot of control, maybe not all of the control, but you do get a lot of control for how your digital environment looks. Who you subscribe to, how much time you spend, and also where you spend that time. Back to our physical environments for a second. Our physical spaces do have habits associated with them. And this could be something like scrolling on your couch or in your bed, doing your work at your desk or your at-home office. Now, the common suggestion for physical habits is to create the habit in a new space. If you're at home, this isn't entirely possible. You don't just get a new home. But you can change up the location of your habit in small ways. So perhaps you typically do your online shopping on your phone or in bed. You could maybe switch this up to doing your online shopping only while you're at a computer or a laptop, or you refuse to do any online shopping while you're in bed or on your couch. A lot of the times we shop on our couches and beds because they're just comfortable. We get all comfy and relaxed, and then we can scroll for a long time. Sitting at your desk is not the same vibe. A super classic example from my own personal life is that when I used to commute to school, it was always on my way home, I would get treats. It was usually like a literal treat, like a cookie or pastry, something like that. But other times it would be eyeshadow products. I cut this route out altogether, and all of a sudden I'm spending no money on my way home from school. Now, there are some habits that it could seem one or the other. So on my way home from school example, I was always shopping at a specific time and a specific location. This can also be true for something like scrolling on your couch at nighttime. You're doing something at a specific location and time. So you can suss out what's what by asking yourself a couple of simple questions. If you had a day off on Friday and you were watching TV on your couch at 10 a.m., would you still scroll on your phone? If you would, it's a location habit. If you wouldn't, it's a time habit. The reason why we would make these connections is not for the sake of it, but in order to help you implement solutions in your life, because different solutions are going to present itself for time habits versus location habits. Emotions are number 3, and this is the most difficult habit to change when your emotions are wrapped up in coping mechanisms, or I should say, if you shop as a coping mechanism. I have an entire video dedicated to emotional shopping and coping mechanisms that also helps you devise a strategy for dealing with this, because this one is going to take a little bit more time and attention and potentially the involvement of a mental health professional to, get the results that you may want. So if this is a habit that you struggle with, please go check out that video. And how we talk about it in this video is going to be on the smaller side. Emotion habits can look like this. A client complained to your boss at your work today, and your boss let you know about that client complaint, and you got in a lot of trouble. That whole situation negatively affected your emotions. You became down. You had really negative, critical self-talk. As a result, you wanted to feel better. You wanted to pick me up. So you went to Sephora on your way home from work, or maybe it was a treat or wherever you like to spend your money. On the flip side, positive emotions can also affect your shopping habits too. So taking that same example, a client calls your boss and applauds your behavior. Your boss then reaches out to you and say that they want to promote you. They want to work with you to give you promotion in the next, couple weeks. And that creates a positive emotion. You feel so happy and excited. You've wanted this for so long, and now it's gonna happen. So on your way home from work, you decide to go get a drink or go buy something to celebrate. Both of these things are the same habit. Noticing willpower and motivation are really difficult to utilize with emotion-based habits because when we're in a negative emotional state, I would say this particularly applies to negative emotions. When we're in that negative state, our logic, our rationale, and our reasoning can go out the window and our emotions can really take precedent. It can be hard to logic with yourself when you feel like shit. You have a few solutions with this habit. The first would be focusing on changing your mood. So uplifting your mood, doing something that would make you feel happier, or doing some thought reframing, something that might, affect your mental space. And what might help change your mood could, just depend on on how you cope. It could be, calling a friend, watching a show, or as I was saying, doing some mental exercises like some thought reframing or some like emotions, thought, feelings exercises. Number 2 would be willpowering yourself not to buy something. I don't generally recommend this as it's very difficult to do. Number 3 would be focusing on finding alternative treats and or outlets for emotional spending. This kind of 1 and 3 would be, as I was saying, your best options, and check out that video for some solutions that you could try. Next up would be reactionary habits, also sometimes called prompt habits or preceding events habits. And reactionary habits are exactly as they sound. They're habits that are a reaction or a response directly from something else. So a classic example would be you get a notification, that's your prompt, and you have an immediate, sometimes knee-jerk reaction to check your phone. These kinds of habits are our most instinctual or autopilot that we have, which makes them more difficult to spot where they can seem invisible because they can seem like natural parts of our lives or our routines, and we are less inclined to question things that appear, natural, things that we just do. So here are some kind of classic examples of prompt habits that are, related to our topic today. You get bored at work or at school or studying, you pull up Instagram, TikTok, some kind of social. It could also be as simple as like seeing your phone and pulling it up. Do you ever find yourself throughout the day just like randomly turning over your phone, looking at your notifications or opening it or immediately clicking on an app? One of the things that I did, this was a few months ago now, I was instinctually just opening Instagram as the first thing I did when I opened my phone, and I put a different app in its place. It was a solitaire app. And I did not realize just how instinctual that habit was because I found myself clicking the solitaire habit or the solitaire app way more than I anticipated. And sometimes the switches are that easy. I use Instagram way less now than I was a couple of months ago, and it was just the matter of switching, where an app resides. Another one would be seeing a fun or interesting product on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and then immediately clicking through to the link to go check out the product or buy it. Seeing an email pop up from a favorite brand and clicking through. Sitting down for a meal and opening up your phone to watch a video. There are tons of solutions that we can implement for our digital life. And when it comes to our digital life, we can have multiple cues kind of working together to, make us or prompt us into more habit loops. To limit reactions to socials or kind of pop-up notifications, you can completely disable them or limit them. Your phone doesn't have to have notifications on like on your off screen, which is something that I've set up. I do not get any notifications except from Star Contacts. And then when I actually open my phone, that's when I'll see all the notifications from like YouTube or Instagram or whatever. And so with that, I have to be intentional about opening my phone at all. And so I'm not disturbed by any of those things. You can also limit your screen time in total or for specific apps. Both Android and Apple allow you to set timers for specific apps and then they'll kick you out, which is very wonderful if you want to limit things like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok consumption. You can also limit not so good for you content to specific times of day. I I'm putting not so good for you content in air quotes because that will look different person to person. This would be content that encourages you to shop or encourages negative self-talk or compare and despair. Our ability and threshold for decision making, wanes throughout the day. So we are at our strongest typically in the morning to the afternoon, and then after that is when it can, So for me, I'll usually pick the not so good for me content to watch around lunchtime because it's a limited window. One, it's earlier in the day, and then two, lunch has a finite threshold. I can't sit there for hours and watch videos because I have to get back to work. So that's a great way to cap off spending or to limit content that you still want to watch that might otherwise trigger you to spend money or that you would have a quick reaction to, to check out or click a link. The last one is other people. And other people can encourage us to shop or spend our money in a lot of ways. You might have friends who don't want to buy alone when you're out shopping, so they'll encourage you to buy stuff, or maybe they just have a treat yourself mentality or a buy and return mentality. And so whenever you're out with them, you feel like you're spending more money. Also, one thing that I've noticed is that when I shop with other people, I almost always spend extra money than I anticipated, even if they're not somebody who has that mindset, because I'll be trying on more items than I would if I was alone. But this doesn't necessarily have to be in the context of shopping at a TJ Maxx or Target with a friend or shopping at the mall. This could be our friends encouraging us to eat out or get our nails done. You might have coworkers, as an example, who go out once a week and they're always like, you need to come, you never come. Or friends who always want to get manicures together. I feel like you get it. Even though you have friends who influence you to shop, you can also have friends who encourage you to not shop or cultivate relationships with people you already have and encourage you to not shop. Sometimes we can assume our friends and family won't support us because their shopping habits don't currently reflect our own. And of course, how this plays out would depend on your specific set of friends and family. But one thing I've noticed, just, personally speaking, is that a lot of folks have been really supportive, especially when I say this is something that I want to do. Could you help me? This would really benefit me, instead of saying you don't have good shopping habits. I don't like the way you shop. I don't like spending money with you. If you could frame it as, I would really love for you to support me, instead of going to Winners, maybe we could go for a coffee instead, or why don't we go for a walk, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, the people who encourage you to spend money, the real important thing that's going to apply here is going to be setting boundaries, learning to set boundaries, and, starting to get comfortable with the uncomfortable feeling of, that can come along with it. That is not my area of expertise, so I'm going to leave that there. Next, I do just want to say next week's video is going to be an absolute banger because we're going to be talking about behavior change solutions, how to go about that. Stay tuned, subscribe. Because shopping is a constellation of habits, even if you know some, there is a good chance that you don't know all of them. And also you might be in a position where you just don't really know what your habits are. You're just not up and on it. So that's totally fine. I got you. The best way to find out what your triggers are is to catch them in real time. So our goal is going to be to help us catch ourselves in real time. We might not be able to do it at first, but we can definitely do it eventually. And we can do it if we kind of, reflect on the choices that we're making. All right, now on to the activity. I have included a link to a trigger tracker template on Notion. If Notion is not your thing, you can absolutely recreate this on Excel. You probably would get, or Sheets, and you could probably get way more data from there. Or if you're a paper person, you can do this or recreate this on paper. So this activity is comprised of 3 components: a daily purchase tracker, reflection, and then a habit change portion. So you're going to track your shopping or your purchases. I would say at least 2 weeks, but I would ultimately suggest a month. And you could do this through No by January or afterwards. So this is not a budget. The point is to be able to start identifying your cues and larger trends in your shopping life, where you're spending your money and how you're spending your money. So really your goal is to track. And this is not about shaming ourselves or judging yourselves. You really just want to notice. So we have like some standard information. We have our item, the store/brand that the item is from, number of items, price, date purchased. The store or brand can give you some pertinent information of, let's say, how much money you're spending at a particular store, or maybe let's say that you do 90% of your Amazon shopping in your couch at nighttime, and Amazon is like one of your big problem categories. You now have a solution. By changing your environment, then you can cut out one of your biggest problem areas. The back of the chart is like the meat of this. So we have category, when, cue, and where. So categories can help you pinpoint which categories you're spending the most in, and also can help you spot relationships between multiple factors. When is the time of day that you bought the thing? We also have the cue. So what cue you believe prompted this purchase. This one's going to get you really proficient at helping you identify your own cues. Very powerful. And then where is where you are making that purchase from? On the train, in your car, in your bed. So the power is really going to be in the analysis once you've made some purchases. That's where the reflection comes in. There's a daily reflection and a weekly reflection. How much of this you partake in is going to be up to you. The daily reflection is going to be the most powerful for somebody who is trying to change emotional spending, or you believe that's a contributing factor to how you spend. Every day has a overall mood rating. I've only put in 3, but really you should have a description for each number, and you don't have to, use mine. These are just examples. I've done this activity before, and I like to put an emoji beside the date. So I have a really clear look at a glance as to how I felt about that date. In the daily, you're going to describe your overall mood, what happened that day that might have impacted your mood, how your mood impacted your shopping. And if you bought anything, how do you feel about what you bought? Did your mood influence your purchase? And then noting any breakthroughs. Most folks are probably just going to stick to the weekly reflection. The daily should take you about 5 minutes. The weekly should take you maybe 5 to 15 minutes, depending on, how much analysis you want to do. So there's also space for your overall mood this week. And then there are some reflection questions about, how did this week go? How do you feel about your purchases, now that you've had some time and space? Do you have any, common locations or common cues, common, stores and brands? What are the overall themes this week? So by virtue of having the data and then having a space basically for data analysis, the goal is to figure out what your cues are, where you're spending your money. The last component is a cue/habit change. So you spend time identifying your cues and the habits that they prompt. I have a template to help you brainstorm solutions, and I also included one as an example. So the example one is treat spending, and I walk you through the thought process of, what the habit cue is, why is this a problem, how might I brainstorm solutions, what might I need in order to accomplish this, and then are there any iterations I need to make. One thing I do want to note about the Notion template, if you want that habit change section as part of the reflection, you can see on the screen that it's connected by a roll up. You are also going to need that database. If you just get all of the inclusions that I have at the link below, there's going to be different pages you'll see, just get them all. And then you can decide what you want to keep later. I know this was a big video. I do hope that it's helpful in giving you some suggestions for changing your habits and identifying your cues. Thanks so much for watching and hanging out with me today. I'd love if you would subscribe to catch more content like this, and I hope to see you again for another video around here soon.